What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Crew 2. And well, as y'all know, it is Wednesday, which means the new summit is now live. It's kind of insane. I would say the So French Summit is probably one of the most intense summits in the entire game with that Bugatti Devo Magma Edition. I know a lot of players really wanted that car. Plus, it's also an awesome looking Bugatti for that matter. I'm actually planning on doing the video for that on Friday, so definitely stay tuned. But for this week, guys, it's definitely not going to be nearly as intense as that one. We have the Wheels Clash here going to give us a live reward sniffer boosted, which I did mention in other Summit videos. I do believe that's also a glitched out one as well, because it does have the Nitro Chemist thing on the bottom of that, but and then in gold, we're going to have the BMW Z4, which is probably one of those rally raid vehicles you have most likely never actually seen anywhere. But moving over to next week's summit, guys, is going to be the 70s Racing Glory. It's going to have a very nice Porsche 935 for the Platinum Reward. And with the touring vehicles being a lot better than how they were, I would say this car is honestly going to be pretty awesome. It's also looking pretty sweet in that picture as well. Then in gold, we have the Squad X tire, which is honestly not that cool. But taking a quick look at this summit, guys, we have some street events and or some touring car events as well. You will also get to drive this car similar to some of the other summits, so I would say this one's probably going to be pretty fun. I don't think it's going to be as intense as the So French, but who knows, I guess we will wait and see on that one. But moving over to the agency, now the biggest thing about this summit, guys, I noticed right off the bat is not going to be the agency tire, which don't get me wrong, actually looks pretty dang awesome. And then in gold, we have the legendary half set, which is actually a Nitro Chemist set for the monster trucks. I would say compared to some of the other sets we have seen, that one's actually going to be worth going after. It's actually going to be the cover photo, guys, of one of my favorite motocross bikes in this game. The KTM 450 EXC Nighthawk Edition came out a very long time ago in one of the motor passes. This bike is honestly so awesome looking, guys, and it's also insanely good. It does over 100 miles per hour as well, which is pretty fast for a motocross bike. I would definitely say it's by far going to be one of the best motocross bikes in the game, but moving over to Brawn and Beauty, guys, is going to be a pretty interesting summit. We will have the legendary half set, which is going to be a Nitro Chemist set for the motocross bikes as well, which is not a coincidence with the agency having that bike on the cover. Then in gold, we have the Ford Mustang GT Rallycross Edition, also going to be one of those vehicles I really haven't used a lot. And then in platinum, guys, another car is also making its return. The Ferrari F12 TDF is definitely going to be a fan favorite. What's kind of odd though is I do remember this car coming back a long time ago. It also had that very odd picture of it in platinum as well, but I know a lot of players actually love this vehicle, and to see this thing make a return is honestly pretty awesome. But now moving over to the Wheels Clash Summit here, guys, starting off with the Slalom. So for this one, I actually decided to run a vehicle you would most likely never see being used on one of these. I'm actually running the Lamborghini Aventador, but in the drift category. It's kind of hilarious how you can actually run cars like this on these, and if you guys actually have a score breaker set, these cars actually do have enough time to actually score decently on these. I know one of the biggest concerns, though, is the drift car actually going to be fast enough? So I have tested this out. And in certain slaloms, I would probably say you most likely cannot actually complete the entire thing with the drift car, but luckily, guys, for Little Eagle, you can actually go fast enough to complete this. And even though I'm 3,000 points behind some people, you'll notice I'm only 1,000 points away. So if you really did want to try out one of the drift cars on one of these events, I would actually say it's going to be plenty fast to complete one of the slaloms. But now moving over to the next skill though is going to be a speed trap. And for this one, we once again jumped into the Corvette Stingray. So as I did mention, guys, in previous summits, if you do want to go faster than like 410 miles per hour, you are going to have to slipstream somebody to actually do so. Luckily, one thing I did notice though about a lot of these speed traps on the Crew 2, at least when it comes to summits anyway, that you don't actually have to be insanely fast to get a decent score. I got 122,000 points going 389 miles per hour. So at least if you guys can get over 120k, I would actually say you're doing insanely good on these speed traps. But Moving over to the last skill is also going to be a slalom as well, but this one's actually going to be off-road. So for this one, I was originally going to use a rallycross car, but I was like, you know what, let's jump into one of the monster trucks with a score breaker set and really see if these are actually going to be good enough. Now, one thing I do have to admit, guys, I would honestly not recommend using one of these, but if you do have a score breaker set, I find these to be insanely fun, and even running a monster truck on a slalom, I still managed to get 155,000 points, which is honestly insane. Now, moving over to the first race here, guys, is going to be with a street vehicle. I actually decided to run the 911 Carrera 4S once again. I would say most of the leaderboard is probably going to be covered in the Lamborghini, which is honestly kind of insane, but the Lamborghini is going to be that incredible, guys. If you do have the Countach, I would recommend trying out that car, but the Porsche 911 Carrera, I would honestly put on like an underrated vehicle list because this thing is insanely good, and luckily this race is also going to be really fun as well. Now, one thing I do want to point out though, the bottom street race is also going to be no restriction, but you probably noticed something. You guys do not get any points for this event, which definitely could change in the future if you guys did want to. For some odd reason, they actually messed up some of these events. I really don't know why they did this though. If you guys did notice by looking at the leaderboard, you're going to notice nobody actually gets points using a regular vehicle. My friend actually used a Jeep here and did manage to get points on it, but there is a small possibility that this event might actually get fixed, but if we think back to that one summit with a motocross bike and a drag event, I would most likely say this event's probably going to stay at 0 points unless you use a weird vehicle that actually works. If something insane happens, guys, I would actually go back and use like the Jeep and or something to get points, but it is kind of insane that we're going to have another event that's kind of broken. One thing I do want to point out as well, guys, I don't 100% know if the points are actually going to work correctly because even the top players also have 0 points as well. So hopefully something like this is going to be worked out with this summit. But to be honest, I would probably not hold your breath over this summit actually being fixed. Anyway, guys, moving over to the next event is going to be one of the new US Speed Tour races in the cities. You will also be able to run one of the motorcycles as well, and the BMW S1000RR is actually going to be pretty dang good on this event. Do keep in mind, guys, I do find these bikes to be slightly better. I've also noticed a lot of these city races in this Season 8 update are also going to be pretty small tracks as well, so I do find the bikes to be better. The BMW is actually a pretty decent bike for the most part, so I will have to take another dive into the touring bikes on the Crew 2 and really see which one's actually going to be the best now. But the next event, guys, is also going to be in Miami, which is going to be again one of the new races, and for this you get to use the Yamaha YZR M1. To be honest, guys, these MotoGP bikes are so awesome. This thing feels so agile when racing it. You also feel insanely fast around corners, and my goodness, do these bikes grip so dang good. So I really don't think these new races are going to be an issue with the bikes though, unless you might not be the biggest fan of actually using the motorcycles, which honestly I really can't blame you. Then the final event, at least when it comes to the new touring car events in this summit, is going to be San Francisco. So for this, you do get to use the Suzuki. I actually found this bike to be one of the more odd ones to use. Now, it is going to feel insanely agile though around corners. I also feel this bike is kind of touchy at times as well. Do keep in mind, guys, this race has a lot of like uneven ground and hills and stuff because we know it's San Francisco. So do keep in mind I found the bike to be hopping around certain corners and or certain areas, which can definitely mess your traction up if you are trying to get a better time. So do keep that in mind when you guys are doing this event. But moving over to the final event is going to be a mixed one. We get to use a hypercar vehicle in one of the touring car races. For this one, guys, I actually decided to run an oddball vehicle, and to be honest, I really did not do that good in this event. I actually chose the Veyron 16.4. This is probably not going to be the best option because we have the Super Sport 300, which I would say is going to be slightly better in some areas. Do keep in mind this event also has jumps everywhere as well, so dodging some of those is probably going to be your best bet on getting the fastest time. And if you guys actually do choose to use a different vehicle, I would say you can also do pretty dang good. I would just say the Veyron 16.4 probably isn't the best option, but definitely a lot farther from the worst, I would also say. But Overall, I do think a lot of players are going to like this summit. Having a street race being 0 points and or kind of broken is probably pretty odd. I would definitely say that was not done intentionally and or on purpose. I would probably be pretty shocked if that was the case, but overall though, guys, I do think a lot of players are going to like this summit. That is, of course, if you're not the biggest fan of the motorcycles, because I would say these touring car events are definitely on the interesting side with these tracks though. But I do think a lot of players are going to find this summit more fun than last week's, because my goodness, the So French summit was so dang intense. But let me know if you guys have any questions at all in the comments below. Let's jump right into this.